I know a little bit about your story, more than other guests that I've interviewed so far, but what is your journey to New York? How did you get here? I know you grew up somewhat nearby, but how did you get into the city?
I was raised not terribly far, but when I decided to drop out of college in my first semester and I said, I want to do music, I want to try this thing, I was just told you got to move to the city. So that was kind of it. I was in my early 20s. I was like, all right, let me find any apartment I can afford. I ended up in Bed-Stuy before it's the Bed-Stuy we know it is today. And yeah, just immediately went on the grind. I said yes to every band that needed a drummer, whether it paid or not. I was just saying yes, and that's how I ended up here.
What do you remember about that first semester in college?
Not much. Like in high school, it wasn't about music for me. I was more of a basketball guy, and I started falling in love with drums maybe my senior year. I had a really cool professor. So I went to a school where I thought to myself, like, all right, I could do both. I'll play basketball and I'll get better at my instrument. And after a few months, it's crazy. I still love hoops, but just drums took over for me. So I was halfway through my first semester and I just started loading videos onto YouTube of me drumming. Not great. I'm sure they exist somewhere, but I'm sure whatever it was, I just started posting stuff and put them on Craigslist. And I was like, who needs a drummer? And I got contacted from a band that asked me to audition in Boston. And as an 18-year-old, when I met them, they were like 25. And in my head, I thought, wow, if you're a grown-up at 25 and you're still in a band, you're clearly going somewhere because no grown-up at 25 would be in a bad band just wasting away. So that was my logic. And I immediately dropped out. I caught a bus and a couple trains, never stepped foot in Boston before, moved up there, and I played in a terrible band. But yeah, my one semester was me making incredibly important life choices. Like I liked the campus fine, but I was staring what was my life of basketball in the face and going, oh, I don't know if I want this anymore. So it was kind of more about that. I just realized the university thing wasn't for me, and I found my passion quickly.
Did you play basketball in college? No, okay.
No, that was kind of the thing, right? It's a winter sport. So the fall time came around. I was shooting hoops a little bit, and it just kind of happened to me quick where I realized that the competition at the school, even though it wasn't a good basketball school, the competition was pretty good. I'm watching kids play every day, and I had spent the first month of school playing hoops, playing drums as much as I could, while also doing pretty poorly in my classes. And I'm like, oh, I really need to dedicate myself to one or the other. And I hadn't had to make that decision before. So it's just like an important few months of growth and life choice making.
Did you feel pressure to want to go to college? Was that something your family wanted for you? Or what? How did you even end up there?
Yeah. Everyone in my family, you went to college, you did well. I have a bunch of aunts and uncles who played college ball. So like hoops is life. Every holiday we get together, we ask if our health is good, and then we immediately talk about how the Knicks are terrible and we need to fire our coach. So yeah, I went because my whole thing when I was little, I was like, I'm really excited to play college ball like the rest of my family did. So yeah, I always knew I would go, but I always assumed I'd finish. The drum thing kind of happened to me quick. Like I said, it kind of happened my last year or two in high school where I transferred to a boarding school to play hoops. And the coolest music professor was there. He told me that there were no drummers left in the school. Every drummer had graduated by the time I transferred to the school. And he told me, he's like, listen, you're way behind in your art credits if you want to graduate from this place. If you want to drum for me in every class I can for this one semester, for this half semester, he's like, we'll give you all the credits you need. Just please drum until we can find another one. So it all kind of exploded at once for me, where my life up until that point was, I can't wait to go to college, play college basketball, and then figure out my life from there. And it felt like in a blink of an eye, it was, oh my God, music is kind of cool. And I dig this and I can be good at it.
How did you know it was time to leave the school? Was that a difficult decision for you or not particularly?
I think it was more difficult knowing my family would be furious.
Really?
Also, they didn't really know how much I loved drums. Like I remember like my senior year when they were announcing, the best musicians in high school. I was given an award at my school, and my family I saw them in the audience at graduation. They were more confused. They were happy that I did something well, but they're like, they're clapping. They're like, I'm sorry, what? You love what? Drums? So it was kind of that, being like, hey guys, thank you for letting me go to basketball camps every summer my whole life. I'm sure it was so expensive, and driving me to, what were those, AAU, those travel teams outside of school. Thanks so much for nurturing my passion for basketball. I'm now an artist. So there was a little bit of that, but they were still supportive after they navigated their own feelings, but it wasn't that hard for me.
Were you nervous to do that, to make the call to truly drop out, or not particularly?
I haven't had to think about that in a long time. There was a little bit of fear, but I just knew what I wanted to do, as foolish as it was. And if I knew it was as hard as it is, I don't know if I would have still made that decision. Our industry is bonkers difficult to push through. But it's just something that felt right to me. I felt like that's the type of thing when you're young, you hear so many adults tell you, just, whether it's find your passion or just like, you just be patient or try new things, you'll find what you love and then go for it. That was the first time where something just kind of clicked for me. I'm like, I'm going to take a dive into this.
Did you know, even at that age, that you had a talent for drumming? Was that pretty clear to you, that you were getting that kind of feedback, or was it more of a gut instinct that you could get a lot better?
I had a great friend group wherever I was, which I think I needed because I'm a very sensitive man. But like every step of the way, I definitely had people who were very supportive, and I picked drums over other instruments because I know you're a sports guy as well, so I'm going to use these analogies. Yeah. It felt like you're the point guard of the band. So it just made sense to me. Like instead of being the lead guitarist where you're shredding and all that, if you're a really good drummer or an impactful drummer, you're kind of like John Stockton, man. Like if you are at your best, you are the foundation for everyone else. You help facilitate making everyone else better. And then in bits and pieces, if you need to shine, you can, but it's really only when you have to. So it just kind of felt like it made sense to me. I felt like I was the field general. So even if I wasn't technically proficient right away, I knew I was, late to the game. So I would have a lot of catching up to do. I really focused on the basics, on what do I need to do to make my bandmates shine? And then I'll figure out all the technical stuff later.
Were you a point guard in basketball?
I was tiny enough to be. I like to shoot from far away. If I had the ball in my hands, I could push it around, but I didn't have the handles of a really good point guard. You know what I mean? The AIs and the Kyries of this world, I was not built for. I was more of the triple threat, pass, shooter, cut kind of guy.
Yeah.
You played, right?
I did.
What was your position?
Like that. Exactly.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah. It's just undersized white guy who knows the game.
And can shoot.
Shoot.
That was the name of my game.
Did you have a good corner three? I feel like you kind of need that in our game.
I was more a top of the key. I didn't really focus on the corners as much, but I've been told that's actually the easiest 3-point shot in the game.
It's the shortest. But I think our games would complement each other then.
Yeah.
So we needed one person to cut to the basket. I'm either free at the corner, and we'll throw it to you at the top of the key.
Exactly.
All right, we're putting a team together on this podcast. We just need a point guard.
You said when you got to Boston that was a bad band. What makes a bad band? How could you tell?
It was just, for me, it was the lack of passion. Again, like growing up with hoops and in a hoop family, it was like my family was very supportive. Whatever you do, just give it 100%. And I thought that's what everyone in the world lived like. I didn't think there was a way to not do that, if that makes sense. So when I went there on this 18, 19-year-old kid playing with musicians who are in their mid-20s, and they were all nice dudes, but I just, like, the singer would show up late, or they didn't really care that much that this one song didn't sound good at practice. And that's something that kind of turned me off. But I kept telling myself, these grown-ups know something I don't. Like, clearly there's something here that I still need to learn. So, I mean, I still remember some of the songs well. Some of it I liked. But, yeah, that was disappointing. I will say they had a manager who was more of a friend, who was really helpful. After about being in that band for about a year, he was the one who pulled me aside, and he got defeated. He was grumpy. He was like, listen, man, you're good at your instrument. I feel like you're going to be too loyal to these guys. You just need to leave. I was like, wow, thanks, grown up, who again was probably like 24 at the time. In my head, there's still like these mythical figures, the grown-ups who play music.
So it really was a lack of commitment that primarily bothered you.
And it's not that hard, man.
Yeah.
If you want to be a musician, it's cool. It's fun. I was grateful for that experience because I learned that there are so many artists, I'm sure in many fields, that use the art as an excuse to avoid growing up. You know what I mean? Like for me, it was a passion right away. I'm like, drums, I'm going to treat it like I did with sports. I'm going to get good at this and I'm going to give it the old varsity try. And I learned quickly how many people were just avoiding responsibility. Yeah. And they love to say they're a musician, but they're not. Or you are, but like, dude, this is your hobby. Just call it a hobby and move on your way.
In the sense of the lack of professionalism and commitment and discipline required in order to improve?
Yeah. Have you found that speaking with other people on the podcast in different fields?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it seems like people, especially the ones that end up living in New York doing their thing, really want to be good at it and believe that in order to be really good at it, you have to work your ass off.
Right.
That's just part of it.
Do you think that's the case in this city more than others?
Probably.
You're going to have to take this podcast on the road, man. You got to see what people say in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah, I think this probably does. I think of cities sort of like bat signals, that certain types of people are drawn.
I like that.
To certain kinds of cities. And I think people that end up being in New York, especially if you've been here for years, being a creative, you probably take what you do pretty seriously because this is not an easy place to be.
Right. Well, I'm going to make this about you real quick. I know you're interviewing me, but you live here now.
Yeah.
And now you're doing podcasts.
Yeah.
Do you think you receive the bat signal similarly?
I think I received the bat signal to be here more as a gut feel without really knowing why.
Cool.
I don't think I had a lot of clarity around what it was about this place that made me want to live here.
No kidding.
Outside of just when I was around this area, I was meeting so many interesting people, and I wasn't where I was living previously to this. And that really matters to me. I thought this city I would live a very rich life being here.
How's it going so far?
Great.
All right.
Well, dude, a big part of it is being able to do things like this. And I never considered doing a show like this before moving here, but I found myself in my spare time, I was going to a ton of art events, comedy events, book talks, improv events, off-Broadway shows, Broadway shows, and I just love that stuff. And I like people who are committed to their craft. And so it just seemed like a natural fit eventually to kind of give it a try.
Awesome. And here we are.
Yeah.
Sitting on your couch with microphones. Very comfy couch.
What happened after Boston? So you left after a year, and what went on?
I was in a band there. I thought we would do way more things. I worked at a Cold Stone Creamery up there at the Prudential Center. The Berkeley students who knew me knew which shifts I worked by myself, so I may or may not have made pop brownies that looked just like the Cold Stone brownies. And I paid my rent by people putting a $20 bill in the tip jar, which meant I'd go back to the hidden part of the freezer, and I would mix in a pop brownie ice cream sundae, and they'd go on their way. And that's how I spent a year of my life in Boston. And I moved back home just because I was like, well, if this band's not going anywhere, I'll figure out my next move. I'll move to another city, find another band to play for. But hell, I'm essentially from New York City. Why would I not try to go home first? So a brief period of time, I was back in Long Island until I turned 21, and I just started saying yes to every band ever. And I'm very grateful. I befriended some really awesome people when I started doing background work on TV shows. When I moved to the city, I'm like, all right, extra way to make money, but I can also choose my schedule. And one of the first shows I was a background extra on, I made some really cool friends, and they asked me to be in their band, and they happened to be making their record with the singer of a band called Wheatus. And that's when I got my first touring gig. I was in my, early to mid 20s. And just if that's not an example of say yes to every gig you could, I don't know what it is. Like I was getting paid gigs elsewhere, but I love this one band. They were called Late Cambrian. They're still playing music. And we played a few shows, and that got me to my first time traveling to Europe and living on a bus and playing concerts. Yeah.
Was that the dream to go on tour? Is the money better? Like in your mind before you got that opportunity, what about touring, getting a touring gig was so appealing?
It's so funny you mentioned the money. I don't think I knew when I was that age, but it's obviously better paying. You get your Broadway gig, you play, you stay at home, you get to see your family every day.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of doing what you love and getting paid to see the world while doing what you love sounded like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And as someone, like, a part of my passion with this whole music gig was realizing that I could leave such a positive and lasting impact on strangers. Instead of just making one person happy in an interaction on the street, I can perform in front of a couple hundred people, a couple thousand people, whatever. And you could make someone's day. You might change someone's life. You never know. And by touring, I figured I can do that on a scale all over. So it's funny. I just had this conversation with someone a friend on the street today. Music, and I'm sure plenty of other arts, if you do it right, it's equal parts selfless and selfish. Like, it's the coolest thing ever. You get to make people happy while doing what you love.
Yeah, a win-win.
Yeah.
Like the classic definition of a win-win.
Yes, that old chestnut.
Did you know when you got that opportunity did you feel lucky, or had you had a bunch of failures before you got the touring gig that made it even sweeter when you got this opportunity? Or did you really have paying work kind of from the beginning of living in New York?
No, the Wheatus was definitely my first steady paycheck. Everything else just kind of came and go. You'd get cash here and there. I just kept putting myself out there. So I did consider myself lucky for getting the gig, but I think just saying, help me out with one of those phrases. I cast a bunch of lines, just opened myself up to have more opportunities to be lucky. So I was very grateful for it. Yeah.
Fortune favors the bold sort of thing.
Yeah. Just go for it, man.
Yeah. What did you know about yourself? And I don't know if you have given this a whole lot of thought. Like, what makes a good drummer? And how did you know, if you did at all in those early years, that you had that?
There's a cartoon that I think of often. It's like a newspaper article style cartoon. And there's just two images. And one is a drummer and his hands are all manic. He's doing crazy stuff. And the bubble from someone who's clearly auditioning the drummer just says, "Wow, you're awesome." And then the next slide is a drummer who's just sitting calm and collected behind the drums, playing the simplest drum beat ever. And then the other person's bubble says, "Wow, you're hired." And that's kind of what the drums are. Obviously, every genre needs something different. But I think the reason why I knew I'd have a good shot at it was what I mentioned before, being the point guard. A lot of talented drummers don't have the discipline to do what you need to make the overall concert the best it can be. Like, there's plenty of drummers who are technically much more proficient than I am, but they just don't have the discipline, man, which you'd think would be the easiest thing ever. Like, you did the hard thing. You trained your hands to be the fastest on planet Earth. You studied book after book after book to do all the craziest tricks ever. But when it's time for you to just sit in what we call the pocket, your groove, your feel, when it's time for you to sit in your pocket, you sound terrible. And all you have to do is just find the groove that your band requires, and everyone's going to sound better. So,
like an inability to fade into not obscurity, but to not be the center of attention. Is that what that means, to sit in the pocket?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, well, the pocket is just a term for your feel. Like this, you could have 100 drummers be told to play a song, and they'll play everything note for note, and then the song will sound different 100 different times. So it's your pocket, it's your feel. And because I was late to the party, I learned quickly that your pocket, that your feel is critically important. So I put a lot of emphasis on that right away instead of learning the flashy tricks. And I think that's what helped me, you mentioned, get lucky. It's like I was able to get more gigs because I would sit, I knew my role, and I would do it well, and everyone else knew they felt that they were playing better because I was there holding it down for everyone, instead of this spastic drummer who's being a little too selfish.
And a little too showy maybe at times.
Yeah, showy's a good word. Yeah.
So knowing your role like you would know your role on a basketball team.
Yeah.
Of what you know, being a role player. Everybody has a role on any team, but knowing that role and not you used this word earlier, having too much hubris, not going overboard with what your allotted role really should be for the collective to perform best.
Exactly. Exactly. That's all it is. I don't want to see Draymond Green shooting a dozen 3-pointers every day.
Yeah. What's the arc to now? So I know you still tour. I've seen you in person in Austin. How did you get from that first tour to here? I know it's been many years since then, but what's brought you up to now?
So I did the Wheatus thing for a few years, but when I wasn't traveling with them, I was playing shows with some of my best friends that I've had since I was a teenager. One Jerry.
Yeah.
So it's even before Boston, I spent a couple months in bad local Long Island bands. And that's how I met Jerry and Danny, who I tour with now. So I would tour with Wheatus, and when I wasn't touring with them, Jerry, Dan, and I were working on one of our earlier projects. And I kind of started finding my life flow there. I started turning down other tour gigs because I knew just how hardworking Danny, it's now Des Rocs, and Jerry were. And there was a few tours I took. One I regretted that didn't go well. I learned right away that they were horrible, angry people. And when you're on tour, those are difficult people to tour with.
Yeah.
Like you're essentially married for how long you're on tour for. You're living together, you're working together, you're traveling, you're eating, you spend every moment together. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I said yes to this gig. A friend of mine was in this band. He was a hired gun and goes, "Hey, listen, this tour's leaving in like 3 days. The drummer just bailed. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I do. I want to say yes to every tour." And within hours, I learned, like, oh, these guys aren't nice. They're not nice to each other. This is not going to go well. So right away, day one of this 4-band tour around the States, I befriended everyone else on the tour. And I agreed. We weren't in a tour bus. We were in a van. I agreed to drive on the night shifts. I figured if everyone's asleep, no one could be mean at me. And if I'm making friends with the other bands on tour, then I don't have to deal with these scallywags.
Yeah.
Can we curse on this thing?
Of course.
All right. I'm going to stick with scallywags for now either way. And man, I'll never forget it. So my routine was, if I did have a drink, it would be like before even like showtime or like hours before. But I knew if I behaved myself, I'd be okay. Towards the end of the tour, there was one, I don't know, it was like a day off, but I had a couple drinks with some of the other people on tour, and my phone dies on the walk back to the venue. So I was like 15 minutes late. And mind you, these guys would always be late to our quote unquote van call because we had to chase tour buses. We were driving all over the country, and they leaned into me, man. They called me irresponsible. They kept saying I was getting hammered before shows, which of course I would not ever do. And I was taking this on the chin. I'm like, there's only a few days left of this tour. I made it this far. It's okay. They said that they were mad at me for hanging out with the other bands. They said they were mad at me for exercising with the other bands. And I was taking it all on the chin. I'm like, all right, listen, you give me all your best jabs. I'm getting my paycheck and I'm leaving soon. And then they said the thing that I couldn't handle as a man in my early to mid 20s, which was, you're not even that good of a drummer. And I think we got to a gas station and I punched our trailer and I broke a bone in my hand. So I spent a week on like a hard rock tour with a broken bone in my hand. And like, thank God that everyone yells at hard rock shows, because I was yelling. I was yelling from behind the drums. Yeah, that was tough, man. They quote unquote, they lost a bunch of my equipment. It cost me like thousands of dollars. So those are the hell stories that you hear from a lot of people who don't tour with people with great chemistry. I guess we're kind of meandering back to what you asked me before, but I learned just from one tour how important it is to tour with good people, because it's your marriage for as long as you're on the road for. So it started with Wheatus, meandered, toured with different people. Got to do the Warped Tour once. You're old enough to remember the Warped Tour.
Yeah.
I was very grateful for that. And once Danny from Des Rocs and Jerry and I started touring very consistently, the band we were in before this was called Secret Weapons. We would tour for years. I knew I didn't really want to tour with strangers unless I really knew and trusted the culture of it. But that's how I'm here today, just saying yes to everything and being more and more picky with who I'm willing to tour with.
What makes good touring partners?
It's, how do I word this? I don't think it's very different from anything you may imagine with coworkers in other environments.
Yeah.
Like I'm very grateful. No one's got drug problems. No one's missing bus call. I think it all starts with who's the captain of the ship. Set the tone. And, Danny, my singer, is one of the hardest working guys I know. And with our tour manager who we've had forever, with myself, with our third bandmate, Eric, we all I feel like we all operate different sections of the band and the culture. So it trickles down to our other employees. And if anyone is kind of a bad egg, they don't make it long. They don't make it to a second tour. So good energy, being a team player, just nothing unlike any other industry, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I would imagine once you find that and find something that works, it's precious and you try to hold on to that because you have the alternative, like you said, like any other thing in life. I don't know when you were first going on tour and how mindful you were of money, like how hard of a life was it back then for you to pay your bills to survive? And I don't know how much, I don't know if you remember how much you were making from being on tour. Is that a lucrative opportunity?
Music has never been more difficult.
Monetarily.
Yeah. It's not a great time to be in the industry. There was a graphic that popped up recently that said that with Ticketmaster and all that, for like the average $100 ticket a customer spends, I think like 10 of it goes to the band. So now split it among band members. It's just the fees from outside sources, and then bands are paying management, booking agent, your label, all of that. And pre-COVID, a tour bus, I'm giving you loose numbers. A tour bus with a driver might have cost you $1,000 a day or a little more. Now you're talking a double or triple that. So now your expenses have never been more expensive. So it's tough. When I first started touring, you could have paid me nothing. I was just happy to be in a bus. But yeah, our industry, we're really getting squeezed. Unless you're in that top 1%, you're really struggling to get by. There's this ceiling you got to get through, and until you do that, every cent counts. You got to make every show count. You got to be efficient. We talked about the importance of a good team, and it's not easy right now.
What of all the revenue streams, what's the most lucrative in terms of making money? How are musicians making money these days?
Bands are essentially glorified like merch companies now. That's all it is, man. No one's buying records, of course. I'm guilty of it. I'm not doing it. We all go to Spotify, where an artist makes a fraction of a penny per stream. And a while back, when you signed a record deal, record labels were just getting percentages of the records. Touring was your own thing. And then time goes by, we all have to sign what's called a 360 deal now. So now labels get a percentage of everything. So your best bet, because touring is so expensive and everyone's dipping their toes in that pool, just constantly updating your merchandise. Like that's, you got to trust that the fans that love you and see you every year when you come to your city, they're willing to buy stuff. Which stinks, man. I just want to play drums and be in a rock band and move people. But you better have cool looking clothes or else you're in trouble. Because
when you sell merch, 80% of that revenue goes to you guys. Why is it that merch is really the financial winner in the music world right now?
Well, if you get big enough where you have a little more clout, you can start negotiating more favorable terms when you tour. You know what I mean? Maybe if you're big enough, you can kind of swing your influence and be like, hey, I want a cut of the bar. You know what I mean? Like then you could start doing a little bit better, or you increase your percentage of your ask or your guarantee so you could start doing better. But until you have that influence, like I said, there's that ceiling you got to get through. If you're only playing 500 to 800 cap rooms or smaller, you don't have a lot of leverage. Like you're lucky that there's a venue in town, as your booking agent has the challenge of trying to put a routing together that makes sense. You're just happy that a city can take you within the window you're going to be cutting through. So something like merch is something that you have a little more control over. You can go, if I know my fan base loves our merch, we know we can print a bunch of different looks and people will be willing to buy it. It's just an extra way to make a couple of bucks. Or the other thing that I feel like no musician likes to do, because they would love to just give everything to their fans for free, but a lot of it is like VIP tickets. Like for me as a social butterfly who wants to make people happy, I'll say hi to my fans before or after shows anytime. You tell me when and where, like we're going to shoot the shit and have a good time.
Yeah.
But again, with so few opportunities to make money when you tour, when you're a smaller band, you're grateful that a fan may be willing to drop substantial amounts for a VIP experience, which is essentially at this point like a hug, a high five, and a picture. Like I'm very grateful my singer is willing to do like a couple of acoustic numbers to make it more worth their while. But we're just, it's a shame. Like if I didn't know better, if I was a teenager watching bands come up today, I would question if bands were super greedy, where I'm like, how are you going to charge us this much? Like, this doesn't seem fair. But when in actuality is that we're desperate for any idea to keep this train, on the track. Yeah.
Which of the merch items sells the best?
I guess it depends on the market, right? I remember when we toured a bunch with now our good buddies, a band called Bad Flower. They're awesome. We were on a tour and they had the coolest beanies ever. They were neon pink beanies. And every show I'd see a bunch of pink beanies in the crowd. And I turned to my singer, Danny. I was like, dude, I know we're going on tour in Europe this fall. We got to do beanies. And he's like, what are you talking about? We have never done a beanie. I was like, I know. We got to do beanies. And it did not go well. But it was my L take. But I guess you get the band tee. You know what you need? You always need a good tour tee with the cities on the back. As a fan, that's the one I want. I want to remember what time of year, what city, where I saw the band when. Yeah. That's definitely the important one.
And that's up to you guys to design the merch and to make it available, or do you have a manager who's doing all that?
I'm sure for every group it's different. Like we kind of have a design, team that we work with that understands Danny's vision really well. Whether it's our logo and what that means for our album artwork and what that can mean to merch for an album cycle. You release your record and your tour on the record. So I'm sure there's some bands that handle all of the stuff on their own. I'm sure there's bands that handle none of it. But that's another team that we kind of trust and rely on, that understand our goal when we tour and what our view is.
I don't know how much you and your bandmates talk about the financial component of things, but has it gotten easier financially the longer you've been in this? That the opportunities, the size of the tours, the size of the paychecks, you can expect reasonably that will grow, or does it really vary year to year and you're always unsure about that side of life?
Ton of uncertainty.
Yeah.
We are now at an important crossroads. I'm sure many bands have, if they've been slow growers like we are, that even though our crowds are getting bigger, we're playing slightly bigger rooms. We know that means we need to give people a better show. Whether that means a better lighting package. We want an extra crew member to make sure everything goes flawlessly, because we've all experienced, everyone on tour has had the catastrophic story where a computer malfunctions, where an amp breaks or a guitar string breaks, but you don't have a crew member nearby fast enough to give you a different guitar. So our crew has gotten bigger and our equipment has gotten bigger and more expensive faster than we're growing, but we kind of don't have a choice. So now the squeeze is getting tighter, even though our crowds are improving. So we just got to push through that next threshold, and then we'll be, like I say, we're living easy, but we'll be able to take a deep breath.
Have you ever, given the volatility and the uncertainty, have you ever seriously considered quitting, or have you quit for a period of time?
I'm sure we all have. I have not quit. I love this thing so much. You do wonder as you get older, you're like, at some point, when do you hang the cleats up? For me, the times when I question it more than anything else is when I hear of friends of mine who have been in much bigger, more established groups, not getting paid their fair share. I'm not here to name names, but I just friends of mine who have traveled all over the world playing in front of tens of thousands of people, telling me the check they got for this one group. And it was like, even though you're in one of the bigger bands on planet Earth that year, the fact that you still get the story of, oh, you need this gig for exposure. I'm sure you've probably heard that interviewing people in different fields, like, oh, this is a great opportunity for you. Oh, you're a photographer. Cool. Do this thing for free for this famous person because it's a good opportunity. Like, well, at what point is it a job? So anytime I've really had my internal panics that I've never said out loud until today, it's usually when I'm like, wow, you're a much more talented and more accomplished musician than I am. Why are you telling me the same story that I'm experiencing now? So those are the times when it could be a little scary.
And despite that fear, you've never really considered dropping out of it altogether. It sounds like that something about the work just keeps you in it. We mentioned before the win-win, selfish and selflessness of it. Like, it's a passion that I love so much. I love seeing the world, and the smiling faces, man, like that is everything to me. I remember, like, when I was young, going to my first concerts as a kid on my own and making friends in the crowd, or watching that first band where, like, I was slack-jawed. I'm like, what am I seeing here? The fact that I can give that back and try to influence people like I was influenced when I was young, like that's everything to me. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be a point where I will face an important life decision, whether it's family building or even my own body, because drums are a really demanding instrument, where I'd have to make that decision, but I haven't had to make it yet. What kind of training do you do to that point of how demanding drumming is? I mean, I've seen you live. Like, there's no way in hell most people would be able to do physically what you do. What do you do to prepare your whole system for that sort of output?
I think as I get older, it's learning how to do more while moving my body less. Like those videos when I was in my 20s, I look like I'm working hard. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it looked cooler. But I watch that now and I'm like, oh, you're going to regret that later. You're going to need physical therapy for that later, man. But before we started recording, you were talking to me about how much how much effort you spend on bettering your body and your mind. Yeah. I think my instrument, but even just touring musicians in general, everyone reaches a crossroads of either like wellness, or you keep that party lifestyle that you did when your body can handle it. And it starts really reflecting quick. You can age quickly on tour if you're not careful. So my routine in my 20s didn't matter. I was like, I was having drinks. Like if I in my pothead phase, I'm like, yeah, sure, Land. Let's get baked. Let's have a couple of beers and, go to bed. If I'm hungover, who cares? I'm not performing until 9 p.m. tomorrow anyway. Now it's, my bandmates are the same way. I love to joke that in my 20s, I was touring with like a bottle of whiskey and a joint. And now I'm touring with a yoga mat and a massage gun, So I'm going to the gym. I have my masseurs or masseuses that I trust. But I kind of don't have a choice. If I want to keep doing this and I love it as much as I do, which I do, I got to take care of my body, or else it's going to be too painful to play, and no one wants to deal with that. Do
you do strength training as well? Is that like a intentional part of you preparing for the work that you do of weightlifting in general, or not particularly?
I lift weights because it's fun. I don't know how much it helps the drums, but we've gotten to know each other pretty well. You know me as a happy guy. I know you as a happy guy. For like the hour at the gym, I'm going to listen to the scariest music possible. Someone is screaming in my earballs, and I get to pretend to be the Incredible Hulk. And I don't get that opportunity, nor do I really want that throughout my day. So that's kind of why I like lifting weights. I'm sure there's some benefit to it, just the rigors of touring, but I'm sure drumming is more calisthenics than it is strength training.
What do people not understand about life on the road? I mean, I know you've toured for years, I would imagine, at this point. What do people that have never really thought about that, have never toured themselves, what comes to mind as someone who's lived that life, something notable?
That people wouldn't expect. I've been at it so long. I guess I've learned these lessons so many years ago. I have to like reflect on what those are. I think some people think it's just a vacation, of course. When I'm traveling with my missus, she does a good job of waking me up early so we can be tourists and vacation. But otherwise, the biggest thing is that if you got loved ones at home, you're going to miss them. You're going to miss some really important stuff. Like missing weddings is the hardest thing in the world. Or just worse, if you lose a family member, like you have important decisions there. Like you can't just leave a tour. If you're a band member, you can't tell everyone, "Hey, sorry, we have to pay this whole crew, pay the bus, and cancel all these shows." So that's definitely a tough thing. I think a lot of stuff that people don't realize, it's just the importance of routine. Like when you're on tour, if you want to stay sane and feel good and really enjoy yourself, a lot of it is just finding your routine and finding ways to make a tour bus feel as home as possible. Like everyone starts tweaking their bunk. You pick the right lights that you love, or like, what are you going to do? Are you going to put up little adhesive strips so you can have an iPad, things like that? Just, the routine is everything.
You sleep on the bus.
Yeah.
That to me, and hearing the story of, I mean, you're literally taking a bus all over the country, right? I mean, you're on the road driving for hours.
Yeah. Like you're sleeping during it.
You're sleeping during it.
Typically. Yeah.
Okay. Just the drudgery of that day in and day out, to me, would feel oppressive and get old very quickly. Does it not strike you similarly?
Despite being in the healthiest culture I've ever toured with, Wheatus was great too. After, on average, a month, and a tour is typically 4 weeks to 6 weeks long, average, you're going to start getting sick of each other. Again, another reason to be grateful for touring with lovely people, because by week 5, everyone's going to be texting their wifeys at home, or like there's going to be a little gossiping about whatever little tick that is so innocuous, but you're around the people all the time where you're just like, I can't take it anymore. There's ways to stay sane though. Like typically in a bus, you keep one bunk empty so you could fly in significant others, that type of thing. Just anything you can do to feel as normal as possible. You use the word oppressive. I guess I wouldn't necessarily feel that way. I love it. I feel like you probably like traveling too. Like you have to be willing. You have to be up for adventure. You're pretty tall. How tall are you?
6'2".
6'2". Okay, you're taller than I am. A bunk wouldn't be too big. I think if you're like 6'6", I think touring's going to be a nightmare. But you're just short enough that a bus will be fine. Honestly, bunks are cozy, man. You pull the curtain, the hum of the engine's actually really relaxing, and you're not getting thrown around like you're in a box truck. It's very comfortable. You kind of get like rocked to sleep. I would say in some ways I sleep better on tour than when I do at home. But if you're a light sleeper, you might be in trouble.
The tours typically are about 6 weeks. Is that standard for an American band or a band in the world?
I would say 3 to 6 weeks is the standard. I think for bands at our level or even bigger, there's obviously exceptions if you're superstars. The standard thing, at least here in the States, is you tour in the spring. The summer is saved for festivals, and then you tour again in the fall. So you want a tour to be 4 to 6 weeks. If it's only 2 weeks long, you go, all right, well, we got to find a way to fill in the rest of the spring because we're only going to be out for 14 days. What are we going to do? And similarly, in the summertime, if you're fortunate enough to get a festival, in Columbus, Ohio, in the middle of June, and then you realize you got another festival down in Jacksonville the following weekend, you might put together like a random 1 week tour where you hit some smaller markets you haven't played before or you don't play as often. So 4 to 6 weeks is about standard because you want to have a full tour for the most active seasons.
You said this earlier that to really make it in this world, in the music world, you really have to be in like the 1%, the upper 1% to get there. What does that look like? How does a band know they have cracked that ceiling?
So I'll let you know when we get there. I'm sure I'll learn another hard lesson once we accomplish this number, but the routine that I at least have heard for so long is if you can sell out 1,000 tickets per city, you can take a breath. Now, I don't know what obstacle will come from there. I don't know if that's not true anymore. I've been in this game a long time, but that's kind of like, listen, if you can get there, you go, hey, I'm a guy with a job. Like, we know that our bus drivers getting paid on time. We know that the gas prices, whether they're skyrocketing or not, we can get through it. Just get to that 1,000 tickets per city and you'll be able to take a breath. Yeah.
And do you know before you go on tour, in the tours you've been on, what roughly you should expect monetarily from that?
Yeah.
You guys talk about, and is that typically distributed equally among all members of the band? How does that work?
Right. Well, couple of different things there. Sure. So, booking agents, you have your analytics, you'll be able to project the rooms you play in a city. Then as the sales come along over the weeks or even a couple of months, it's common for you to either be upgraded or downgraded if the venue you have a deal with has different size venues in the same city. So you project to do a certain number in each city, and you get as close to as you can. If it sells so quickly, congratulations, we're going to move you up to the bigger room.
Yeah.
But this happens even to bigger artists where you just have to accept the reality. Like you could be a bigger band, but this one city may not have been, eating what you're cooking this one year, and you're going down to a smaller venue. And as far as distribution, that all goes like band to band. Are you all equal partners? Is the singer get 50% and everyone else gets other percents? Are you just a hired gun? So you're getting a steady paycheck every week, regardless of the size of the show. That's all different band to band.
Does the business aspect of this work detract from the love of just the art of it all?
Yeah. I'm sure as you get older, that happens more and more. And that's probably why it's such a young man's game and why it's so difficult to make a living. I'm sure as you get older, you go, damn, I want to have a family.
Yeah.
I want to be able to afford to have a family. Or, I need a bigger paycheck. And all of a sudden you got a kid like me when I was 20 years old being like, oh, I don't care. Pay me $100. Wait, I'm getting food on tour? There's a per diem? Cool. Pay me nothing. Just give me peanut butter jelly sandwiches. So yeah, it definitely gets more difficult as you get older. When you're young, it's more altruistic.
Yeah. A couple more questions I want to ask you before we wrap this up. One is, as you guys try to get into that upper 1%, and I obviously hope you do, but if you don't, do you still regard the work and as much effort as you've put in as like you're already successful? I mean, dude, you're getting paid to do what you love, to your point. And I'm sure it's not easy even now, but is the success, has that already been obtained for you? Or
absolutely not. Yeah. If we're not big, this is all a waste. I regret everything. I quit. I'm removing all of my tattoos. No, I'm incredibly grateful for it. For me, more than anything, I think about my interactions with kids on tour, with like families that would come to shows and they have like a 4-year-old with the cute little headphones on. Like that's the stuff that stays with me the most, because I remember being the kid in the crowd. So I'll be able to look back on those fondly forever, because I remember being the young kid and seeing bands that meant a lot to me. I remember being like 12 years old and trying to sneak into a show, and I was about to get kicked out. And one of the band members, what the heck was the name of that band? I don't remember. Pretty big band though. But one of the band members saw me and my buddy trying to sneak in, and he literally turned to security. He's like, "Oh no, they're our guests," and they escorted us in. And like that's stuff that sticks with me forever. And I think when I try to give back in that aspect, whenever I see families at shows, especially if there's like a cute little kid in the front row who know all the words, like you bet your bottom dollar, I'm like, you're getting my drumsticks at the end of the show. I'm going to talk to the parents and say, listen, if this kid has any interest in drums, we'll put together a Zoom. I'm going to give you drum lessons, whatever you want. So those are the things that make me feel like I succeeded already. Like whether those kids fall in love with music forever, or if I just made a special moment for them, knowing that they and their parents had a special day together when they were 7 years old. Like that's enough for me to know that I did something right over the last few years.
That's awesome. You said earlier, and I want to close with this, that you're a sensitive guy. How has that helped and hurt you so far in your career? And what do you mean by that exactly?
You definitely got to toughen up. I'm sure when you've interviewed actors, they've had to deal with it more than me, where you were going to get turned down for 99% of what you auditioned for, and you just need that one. So I have had to toughen up a little bit because there is a lot of struggle along the way. But as far as just being a sensitive guy, I'm just grateful that I had a very supportive team around me to give me time to mature, to handle criticism and hardship better. Because if I had to get punched in the face, metaphorically speaking, or not literally, of course, if I got hit that hard when I was younger, I don't know if I still would have done it. Like if I had enough people telling me I was really bad, I don't know how people can just brush that off when they're young adults. I really applaud people who have that level of self-confidence, because I sure didn't when I was that young.
How do you think it's helped you having that level of sensitivity in the artistic world,
right,
as a musician?
I guess being sensitive made me very empathetic. And I guess my whole overarching, my ethos, why I'm doing all of this was based in empathy. I wanted to do something that made me happy, but I loved knowing that I could change people's lives and make people really happy. So I think that sensitivity made me better at my job, because it motivated me to be better, because I knew if I was better, then I'd have a better chance at leaving a lasting positive impact.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you. This was fun.